in May. I probably wouldn't call myself an expert on microgreens growing, but do the best that I can. And basically, what I do, I specialize for right now exclusively in microgreens growing and wheatgrass. And I grow hydroponically as well. It's indoor farm. You can probably see in the background over there. That's my testing station, and some, doing some experiments. And then I also have a commercial space for growing on a bigger scale a little bit, and specializing in just marketing into local restaurants, farmers markets. We'll talk a little more about, who we sell and how we do that a little later, I suppose, during our conversation.
Yeah, I guess I failed to mention, I met you at the last CEA school, I guess, which was it February, March, somewhere around there? They all kind of run together. May. Okay, yeah. So May, I kind of get confused. I'm up there roughly every couple of months, given that, and I'll be there next week teaching as well. And again in December, if you want to look that up on their website or on their Facebook, it's Grower Supply, and it'll link to the CEA school. And I believe there's a link up at the top. So as you got started, I mean, you kind of had an idea of what you wanted to do before you showed up. Kind of talk about the experience up at the school and what you got out of it, and as far as what all the school entailed for you, and do you felt like it was worth it for you to go, and what you kind of took away from it?
Okay, sure. I mean, I've been growing for a while for myself. I'm originally from Belarus, and I grew up with my family having a garden and just spending every summer growing something, always having fresh fruit and vegetable from our own garden. So when I moved to the big city, I pretty much brought it with me and tried to grow everything in my house. And, when my husband and I met and moved in together, he called it a jungle because I always have some green stuff in the house. I think he got tired of it at some point. So, but what made me make a one step forward and actually take it on commercial scale was last December, I was on the plane flying to Vietnam and came across an article about London company called Growing Underground. And basically what the guys are doing, they've taken World War II bunkers from, that were abandoned by the city for the longest time. And they just set up a hydroponic farm growing microgreens. So I read that article, and I started thinking about that. And I figured that potentially something like that can fly in DC. There is nothing that I was aware at that point or saw in DC, something similar to that. So I did a little more research, started our local market, figure out that there is really nothing like that. And that what made me start a business and start a commercial farm. So prior to showing up in CEA school, I was just doing a lot of online research, trying to talk to local people, trying to run some tests just in my home and, see what works best. Since I kind of did a research for my microgreen systems and came across, Farm Tech or Grower Supply microgreen tables and fodder systems that are convertible. So what I wanted to do, basically the reason why I came to the farm, first to the training in Connecticut, was because I wanted to meet with people. I wanted to, talk to experts, talk to other farmers just like yourself, and try to get some feedback and, what people were successful with, what didn't work, what worked. And I also wanted to see the system in person before I actually purchased it. So, and I thought it was really, really helpful when I showed up in Connecticut because it gave me a better idea and understanding the space that I needed, how it works. I'm obviously not an engineer and anything. I've never set up anything like that. So, and the devil is in details. So conceptually, I understood how it works, but it was helpful to see all the little tiny details that go into it, and also gave me an opportunity to sit down with the representatives and actually see what my needs are, what I'm going to do. I like the personal relationship that I was able to establish, and it was interesting to hear other experiences that people had with growing microgreens. And again, your session, and I probably will talk a little more about that when we're talking about marketing, but there are some pieces of advice that really stuck with me, based on what you said. And I think they're very good. For example, when you said about don't grow the best produce that you cannot sell, but rather, you can grow average produce, but if you can sell it all, then it works. And I thought it was invaluable. I thought it was really good approach to that. And selling is important. That's what it's all about. If you cannot sell, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I liked what you had going on, and the reason I've kind of kept up, in contact with you is I felt like you were doing things right. You had, when you talk about marketing, it really doesn't matter what you're selling as long as you're doing the marketing correct and it works. Well, you already had a great website. You had a great logo. You had all these things done right from the beginning. So I knew I don't really like to waste a whole lot of time with people that don't want to implement some of the just basic business practices that it takes. You want to set it up right and do it right. I love the idea that you were growing in unused urban spaces. This grow room behind me, it's inside of a warehouse that we own that used to be a truck, a diesel repair shop. So to take a diesel repair shop and to turn it into something we're churning out, there's about 4,000 plants growing in here at any one given time, and it's a small area. But, to be able to turn these urban developments and urban places into something that's producing something wonderful, that's what's really been fun and entertaining for me. So I've always enjoyed working with you. You've been very receptive. I've seen you take some of the stuff that we've talked about and implement it. Your website just got really, really good after that, and the pictures are great. And some of the things we talked about, I've seen you implement, and that's a big thing for me. I like working with people that will take, at least look into it and put these things into play. Because when you put them into play, it makes a big deal. I'm a coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a coach, but at the same time, I also have coaches, business coaches, and you can have all this information in the world, but unless you do what these experts, suggest to you, spin it your own way and do whatever, you think is going to work best for you. Of course, it makes all the difference in the world, because just going through it by yourself and trying to do it by yourself, it's a big, big task.
You can't do
it. It can get you down sometimes, so.
It's difficult, and I was lucky. To have the advice. Your advice. My husband has a marketing degree, so he's been great help in terms of helping out with a website and figure out getting the feedback. My brother-in-law has been fantastic. In fact, he was. If anybody's looking for resources, I will say that I got my logo through a website called Fiverr, Fiverr.
You got a deal, because it's a great one.
It's fantastic. I mean, you have all these different people with different perspectives, and it's really not a huge investment. So for anybody who's starting out, you can always redo that. But for anybody who's starting out, it's a great website. You don't have to put tons of money into it. You can get multiple concepts. You can get multiple revisions. And, I've been really, really happy. I mean, I got my logo done there. I got my label done there. And it's been great. And with all the feedback from other people, and it doesn't matter. You send it out to your friends. And the problem is you have to know what you want too. You can solicit all the feedback that you want, but at the end of the day, everybody has an opinion.
Oh, sure.
They all gonna differ. So, you have to come up with something that feels good and right to you.
Yeah.
If everybody says something doesn't work, but you still want to do it, it probably doesn't work. But, if you have 10 different people with 10 different opinions, you'll have to make a decision yourself.
Yeah, and that's what it boils down to. It has to boil down to the owner's vision or the group of owners' visions or however that works. But logo and marketing and stuff I could talk about all day, but I'm going to try and keep it on track, or else I'll go off on a tangent. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I grow and why we grow it, and then we can talk about kind of your perspective, because we do different things. Basically, what we do is we take everything that we grow here and we turn them into artisan salads. If you look at our Facebook page, Blue Collar Paris' Victory Gardens, you can see about for the last year all these different. If you just scroll through our photos, you can see all these artisan salads that we're making. And what we found was we could grow all these microgreens and we had success with them, but the perishability rate of those versus the lettuce didn't quite add up. And since we're selling a whole product, the microgreens would go bad before the lettuce would go bad. So basically we converted all of our microgreen trays into additional space for taller vegetables, Swiss chard, romaine lettuce, different types of arugulas, stuff that's going to kind of hold itself up. But we did save some trays, and what I really like to grow is dwarf gray sugar shoots. Shoots are a little bit different than a microgreen. And I guess before we go any further, I want to make sure we understand the definition of a microgreen. There's shoots, there's sprouts, and then there's microgreens. Sprouts are grown 3 to 4 days, tops. Typically in a dark, wet environment, there's a lot of room for bacterial stuff, to happen. To me, it's more reliability. With the microgreens, you have your light, you have your ventilation, you have air going over this thing, you have your water dialed in. So to me, it's a much more sanitary, controllable, sterile growing environment. And the list of microgreens, it seems to grow every single day. There's not a month or two that goes by that I'm not getting something from Johnny saying, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. Johnny Selected Seeds up in Winslow, Maine is who we get all of our stuff from. And they have just been absolutely instrumental in our success over the last couple of years. We've got a lot of projects going on with them. I was able to go up to their trial farm about this time last year, and it's just phenomenal. The passion that Johnny's has, the passion that Grower Supply has, helping these people, helping us, and everybody just get back into the farming the way it should be. It's been a lot of fun. So going back to the microgreens that we do the dwarf gray sugar shoots. We get a ton of volume and a ton of yield in such a small space. And it just really packs a punch to the salad. Every now and then we'll still grow a microgreen for a specialty salad or by request, but because we're so limited on our space here, we try and just keep it on the dwarf gray sugar shoots that we can put in these artisan salads. So if you'll follow vglunch.com, victorygardens.lunch.com, or on Twitter, you can see our past salads. You can see what we're doing with our microgreens, not only as a garnish, but really an enhancement to the flavor. We do themed salads every week. So there's sweets and there's milds and there's things that pair well with, Asian cuisine and Mediterranean cuisine. And then you can bring that back into your garden salads. There's hot and spicy, and, it's microgreens. You have such a limitless opportunity to garnish with some of these things that people have never seen before, and that's why we like growing them. So, but I hope people check your website out and check your Facebook site out, because your pictures are phenomenal. What you're growing is just far and above better than what we're growing. But that's kind of what you're specializing in, so it should be. So if you can just talk a little bit about what you do and maybe who you market to.
Sure. Well, thank you for the compliment. But I'm a risk-averse person, so unlike you, who's jumping into things, completely with everything that you have, I decided to start slowly. That's why I chose microgreens, and that's why I do them primarily for right now, because it's a short life cycle, so you really can adjust fairly quickly and run through trials. And if something doesn't work, you just start over again. Usually it takes about 7 to 10 days, some varieties up to 2 weeks. So when I started pretty simple with the most popular varieties, with varieties that take about 7 days, the shorters. So I started growing arugula, and they're fairly easy to grow as well. Arugula, radish, mustard, some of the buckwheat lettuce. So that was a pretty good start. Once I got comfortable with those, I started experimenting with something that takes a little longer time and maybe a little more difficult to grow. I started to do micro basil, micro cilantro, micro celery, amaranth. And those varieties are, so the interesting thing is that, the simple stuff is not as popular. So you have to go into more complicated stuff fairly quickly, because for me, I went conventional route. I started marketing it to restaurants first, and usually chefs want something cilantro is very popular, basil is very popular, and some other varieties like marigolds and red vein sorrels, and something that looks pretty, something that has pretty leaves and a lot of flavor as well. So those varieties take a little longer to cultivate, and sometimes they can be a little bit picky in terms of what media they like growing on. And for me, when I started out, I decided to make it complicated for myself, because I did not want to use rock wool, which is very popular with hydroponic growers. And the reason why is because it's not compostable or biodegradable. So I went on the search, and that's why it took me a little while. I went on the search for material that potentially, that will be good for growing miscellaneous kinds of microgreens, but also will be compostable. I finally narrowed down. I was able to find hemp mats that are completely biodegradable, and majority of microgreens that do pretty well on those mats. But I also play with coco coir because some of the bigger seeds, plus chards and beet, those seem to do better in coco coir and not on mats necessarily. So it's all experimental. And
that's one thing I don't think a lot of people understand, is how much experimenting and how much trials you have to do on your specific system. So it's a great point that you bring up. You tried different growing mediums. We're playing with our lights, we're playing with our temperature, and just because you can grow one microgreen doesn't necessarily mean you can grow another one at the same temperature and all that. So the experimentation you have to allow before you start making any type of money, and especially any profit, two different things, that you're going to have to allow time and allow material and cost into experimenting for that. So that's a great point you brought up.
Yeah, I mean, microgreens, again, they're becoming more and more popular, but it's difficult to sell to general public at this point, because you have to do a huge amount of marketing and actually let people know what they are, because microgreens is not an official term, it's a marketing term, and a lot of people outside of restaurants and chef communities really haven't heard of that. So, when I started my business and I quit my job, my full-time job, and I told my friends what I was doing, they're like, huh? What are you doing again? What are you growing? Never heard of microgreens. So it's not that easy yet. I mean, I'm hoping that people will learn, and people will sample. And a lot of people don't realize that microgreens taste just like a fully grown vegetable. So if it's a radish, it tastes like a radish. And I don't think people understand that. Greens can taste as a fully grown root vegetable, for example. But amazingly, I was surprised myself. And when they taste, yes, then people are ready to go and pick up some microgreens in the store. But until then, it's a little difficult. It requires a lot of work trying to push your product out there.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to grow is when we're growing at a higher rate was the microgreen carrots. And as we would give tours, I would, it's just this field of greens. And I'd say, hey, I want you guys to try something. So I'd snip off some of the carrots and I would let them try it. And the disconnect between the color of carrot and the taste of carrot, their brains weren't allowing them to make that connection that this is a carrot. And I'd say, see if you can tell me what that is. So they'd chomp on it and they'd try and figure it out, and we'd give them a little bit more. And there's like, I know what it is, but I don't know what it is. And I said, it's a carrot. And as soon as you said carrot, I mean, they're just blown away that this little tiny, stem could have such a flavorful impact and taste like the bigger one. But you're right, some of them, they don't taste like it just yet. I'm going to go back to what you said a minute ago about amaranth. It takes me so long to get it to germinate and so long to grow that as much as I want to grow it and as beautiful as it is and some of the things I would like to do with it, I don't grow it. So I'd like to hear
Well, I actually started growing amaranth with hemp nuts, and germination wasn't a problem. And actually, I can get it to the stage where I can probably push it to the restaurants in about 7 to 9 days. But the growth would stall at about, first 2 weeks. It really wasn't moving ahead, and I keep seeing. And if you look online, if you look at all the pictures, and there's anything from absolutely tiny to pretty big microgreens, there's a very large range of what restaurants would accept. And I was talking to chefs, and I was trying to get their feedback, and I said, well, how does it look? Is it what you expect? And a couple of chefs I worked with, they actually moved from Denver in California. All of those places, obviously, that completely spoiled all kinds of different microgreens that you can probably grow. So, they obviously jumped into more complicated types of microgreens when I introduced my product, and they were totally fine with my amaranth. They thought it was completely fine. But then I also recently tested it in coco coir, and it did much better. The color wasn't the same. For some reason, the color changed toward a little more greenish undertones rather than being very, very bright, cherry red color. Not cherry red, I don't even know what, burgundy red color. So it had a little bit of green to it, but I started to develop bigger leaves and a little, actually taking the shape that I wanted it to shape. So I'm still playing with it. Like I said, it's all experimental. It's all, trying different approaches to it. I know that one of the things that I learned is that amaranth likes it on the drier side, and, if you know better, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm also trying to manage the moisture level and see if it will respond to that in any way. But I mean, it sells. It has a nice color, but I noticed the difference between the stages to where it would stop growing one material versus the other.
When one of the last times I was up in Hartford, a mutual colleague of mine and yours, your salesperson, we went out to eat, and we always get the salad because we always want to see what's going on. And the salad comes and has all these microgreens on it, and him and I we're going through the salad and we're taking a look at it and we're inspecting it, and the waitress is like, it's a 5-star restaurant, and the waitress is like, something wrong? It's like, no, we're just looking at your microgreens. Where'd you get them? And she could, of course she couldn't answer, about it. I don't know, even what you guys are talking about. So it's, you can definitely become a microgreen nerd pretty quick. So, so I'm going to, it's kind of fun to watch people's reactions. So I'm growing in basically a GT70 channel with a timed, our hang up here is we have to cram so much into such a small space that we kind of have to do a general. Remember when I was talking up there, I always talked about our range that we worked in, our range of, what might be great for one plant might necessarily be great for another. So we kind of try and find a balance in between so we can grow so many varieties because of what we're doing. And so that, I think that's why we kind of got away from it. Again, there's that perishable aspect, and then we couldn't make the microgreens go with what we needed it to do as far as picking schedule and this, that. We all had to force it down a tunnel.
Having some technical difficulty.
It looks like we've lost Nick for a little bit.
Yeah, we just, but I can pick up hopefully while Nick is coming back and talk a little bit about the system that I grow in, and it's pretty much the same system. I got my system also from Grower Supply, and like I said, that's the reason why I actually went to Connecticut to see it in person. And I know what Nick is talking about. Again, we just talked about amaranth and controlling. You can't really in the system control how much water each plant gets because they all on the same trays, and each tray gets, I guess, flooded at the same time on the same schedule. Nick, go ahead. I was just saying that, I grew up pretty much in the same system.
I could hear you. I just couldn't.
Oh, really? Oh, I see.
Jamie, where are we at on time?
We're at right at 30 minutes right now.
Okay. Well, we're going over. We just got a couple more things to talk about, and I would love to hear from somebody else. And if you guys have any questions that we could answer specifically, if you had one thing to do over and to start, if you could say to yourself now, talking to yourself a few months ago, what's one thing you would have done different?
Well, I don't have any official education in agriculture. So I guess that's one thing that would help. I mean, especially with today's technology, understanding the role of the technology plays in agriculture, being able to manage all the computerized system. If you choose to go that route, the more expensive route, a lot of labor can be eliminated by technology. You know, understanding the lights. Again, I see you have T5s. I have T5s as well, but in the recent few weeks, I came across multiple articles about LEDs. So I started looking at that and being able to understand what plants need and the chemistry and fertilizers and, you know, nutrients and all that. So I think it would be much shorter and easier learning curve for me if I actually had some education in that. So that probably the most helpful thing for me if I could go back and actually have it done before I started.
Yeah, when you look at LEDs, you know, obviously when you're first out, you're starting out, especially at the rate that we kicked in here, we couldn't afford the T5s, or we couldn't afford the LEDs. I mean, it's just such a costly expense, which over time, you know, you figure in your electricity and all that, you know, it would have been great to go with LEDs, especially the adjustable ones where you can adjust the red and the blue lights like what we saw up there. But it's an expense. I mean, the computers are expense. Everything is an expense. And when you start out from absolutely nothing and go all in like we did, I mean, it's just something we couldn't swing at the time. I can see us buying LEDs for specific crops as we move on and move forward. You know, but we've got a high tunnel or two going up this winter, so we're evolving outside of hydroponics and outside of the grow room, just for the efficiency and the electrical cost is just outrageous, you know. But learning, yeah, I like what you said about learning more. We just jumped so fast into it, which I really don't regret, because I think we made a lot of great decisions because we had grower supply and because of their knowledge base, because we had Johnny Seeds and we had their knowledge base. It just really helped. It helped us shortcut the learning curve, I guess you could say. You know, before we started all this, I didn't have anybody to ask. You know, I tried to approach a couple of other growers, and they were just like, they didn't want to talk to you. I mean, I don't know if they viewed us as the competition. Guys, we still have some questions coming up. We're going to get to those in a second. Jamie's going to compile those, and we're going to start answering them real quick. But there just wasn't anybody to ask, and that's why I found the need. And it's really an honor for me to go up and help share my experience and kind of help newer growers and even some seasoned growers that are transitioning into hydroponics, you know, to say, this is what I did, what I would have done different, kind of look at their orders and go, yeah, you maybe not need as much of one thing, but more of another, just to save on freight and stuff I know that they're going to need later on. So that's, I wished I would have had somebody I could have gone to on a more consistent basis to ask questions on. That's my big thing. So
sure, the same. I feel exactly the same. Second.
So if you had to stop everything and just grow one microgreen, what's your favorite one to grow?
Oh wow. There are so many of them, though. You know, every single one of them. It's really difficult question to answer because every single microgreen has a purpose almost, you know, either because of the shape or because of the texture, because of the color, or because of the taste. Every single one of them is different. But if I were to choose from what I grow right now, I would say basil is probably the cutest one, if you can say that. I mean, it's really pretty when it grows. I mean, it's really, you know, cute green color with nice leaves. So, and the flavor is amazing and it's so versatile. But for more practical reasons, I would go with you and, what you did, probably growing the shoots just because of the mass, because how easy they are to grow, and also the mass that you get out of it. You just get bigger volume from a smaller space. And it's pretty popular, and you can do pretty much, I've been experimenting with so many things, and I'm working on putting them on the website for people to see and just giving ideas. Anything from just eating them raw to putting them in salsas to putting them in soups. It's just so versatile. So
I don't know how many people of you saw the kind of promotional poster we put up for this blog, but there's a picture of a pizza, and there's a baker that we sell to here local in town. He called me up and said, "Hey, we want to do a microgreen pizza." So they made this. Basically, it was a margarita pizza, and right before it was brought out to the table, he took our microgreens and infused it with it was some type of lemon sauce and put it right on top, and it was fun, and it was nice to be a part of that. You look at the local food movement and how these smaller restaurants and especially the independent restaurants wants to pair up, and we can provide the community with something together as a team, that they've never had before. That was a great experience that weekend. So, Jamie, let's start getting into some questions, kind of go in order, and let's see how many of these we can answer.
Okay, I think the two comments I've seen so far have both kind of addressed the same thing. People are wondering, if hydroponic crops can be considered organic, and what is your stand on chemicals when you're growing and treating?
So here's my stance on organic. It's a lot of that goes to, as we own a retail nursery that specializes in not really selling chemicals, but we do bat guanos and composted cotton burrs and dried molasses, and we bring in all these quote unquote organic solutions for soil amendments and fertilizers and bug control and all this thing. And when somebody says organic to me, I almost ask them, what does organic really mean to you? There's certified organic, which allows for a certain amount of pesticides to be sprayed. There's organic as in, if you have an older couple that's been doing things naturally for 50, 60 years in their backyard, to me that's more organic than being certified organic. It's a buzzword, it's a trend word, it's a word that's attached to a government agency for tax, pay us a certain amount and we'll certify your farm organic, and we're going to come out and we're going to check you out, and which I like. I like that people are checking out these farms, but there's still a little bit of play into, you can use certain chemicals, you can use certain growing methods that I myself wouldn't consider organic. Some municipalities, the water's so bad, if you take like these greens right here, they're in a sealed environment, they're getting everything they need. But if I were to take it and wash it in some of these municipal waters that have a water restriction or a boiling point at some, you're gonna get actually more stuff put onto the plant by washing it than not washing it. So I will never become a certified organic grower, because I think it really handcuffs you to doing some things that you may not want to do or may not be the best. We follow really safe handling practices. We have a certified kitchen, so we can apply some of that, certified kitchen stuff and food handling, lessons that we use on our retail end to in here. And it's, I really don't like the term organic, because it just really has multiple meanings, and everybody's so passionate about what that means to them. You can step on a lot of toes real quick. But again, it's when I go to the store, do I buy organic? Yeah, I do. If I'm not growing it, just because I'm hoping it is a little better. I'm hoping that if somebody took the time to get certified organic, that they're going to spend a little bit extra time in the field, or with seed selection, or with how they're growing, to care. But we're also talking about the age of mass industrial, high output. It can mean so much. So what I'm growing here, I consider it organic. My mineral solutions are just pure mineral. I mean, if it's magnesium, it's magnesium. It's not magnesium that's been fooled with, or boron that's been fooled with, or anything like that. I don't grow aquaponically. I don't we have so much stuff going on. I don't have time to mess with the fish. So we just get, really pharmaceutical grade type minerals that's mixed up in a solution. And that's what we use, and I'm sure people have opinions on that, but that's my opinion, and that's what we do. So as far as organics, it's up to the eye of the beholder. I truly believe that. It can mean a lot. So,
yeah.
Jamie,
Well, if I can real quick add to that, when I did the research on the whole organic understanding, so a lot of countries, including Canada, for example, they would not consider anything grown hydroponically organic. They just would not do that. So the definition of organic was anything that's grown in soil. So it by default goes into soil. So I know that USDA relaxed that a little bit in the United States, and I've seen some farms getting certified organic hydroponic farms. For example, one of them I think is in California, called Up, and it's the problem is that any product that's grown or certified organic here in the United States cannot be imported into other countries because they just cannot. Maybe it's going to change. Going forward as technologists around the world, there is a huge movement on doing stuff hydroponically indoors farming. So it potentially will move, change because legislation never catches up fast enough. But as of right now, it's not the same thing. Now, from, sort of like Nick was saying, it all comes to, I started my business because I like growing stuff for myself, and my concept of the business was to do the same thing for other people. I would not grow something that I wouldn't eat. And,
sure.
Even so for myself, it's not so much organic, but just naturally grown without any kind of pesticides, because without any kind of chemicals. I mean, I'm using lemon juice to pH balance my water. Good, bad, or indifferent, but I'm using lemon juice because I don't want to put any kind of acids in my water. So I think it all comes down to being able to establish ties with your community, to know your farmer, to know their practices, whether or not there's naturally grown, I think, certification as well, where local farms go, peers just go to each other and see what the practices are. Because getting USDA organic certification is also very expensive and very prohibitive for small farmers. So it's not just about the word, it's just knowing what the practices are.
Yeah, and Chef Dennis just had a great point. He said we have to start somewhere. We need more transparency in products and farming. I'm in a small town, and Chef Dennis, people can come out to our nursery, and our grow room is sealed off. Obviously we're growing food for people. I don't want a bunch of people in here and contamination, this, that, and the other. But when people come to the inside part of the nursery, they can look in a bank of windows and see everything that's growing. So they can see the whole process from our propagation table to where everything's being grown at. They can look inside of our greenhouse. They can see what's going on, and it's, as far as transparent, we got a window, so understanding the local food producer and what they're bringing to the table versus you go to a grocery store and it's, we got local food, but what's local to, I'm not gonna say any names, of course. Everybody's got a bigger lawyer than what I got, but if you go to a grocery store and it says local, what does that mean? Is it 100 miles? Is it within the state? Is it within 500 miles? And it says local, but there's no really jurisdiction or boundaries as to what that means. But if I go down to my local farmers market and we take our stuff, it's, that's Nick. We've gone out, we've seen stuff. They see the passion in it. They see what we put in it and our beliefs. And I'm feeding it to my kids, and that's where I think the transparency comes on. You have to start supporting these local growers. And the thing is, the local growers, they can't grow everything. It's seasonal or somewhat seasonal. I'm not seasonal here because I'm inside, but it's a big deal to know where your food's coming from, and the more you can get with these local growers, the better off you're going to be. Jamie, give us some more questions.
That's the only one. That covered it for what I have here.
And if anybody wants to hop on, we've got a space available. Feel more than free to do it. If you have any questions, like I said, I've been growing hydroponically a little over 2 years now. I've been in the green industry for 13 and growing stuff just for a long, long time. And both of us are fairly new to it, but we both kind of jumped in with both feet and are we experts by any means? I'll probably never call myself an expert even after 30 years because technology changed, the seeds change. We have a lot of stuff going on. Our intention here is just to say, hey, these are microgreens. This is how we do it, and maybe just help anybody with any questions. So.
Yeah, and if I were to add something, if somebody on the call here who's watching and listening would like to go into microgreen business, I will say one thing that probably just growing microgreens will not be sufficient. Just like Nick, dropped it and switched to the lettuce, I will probably have to expand and do something else and different types of vegetables or herbs, depending on what chefs who I work with or public will ask for. But microgreens are, in order to make money growing microgreens, you have to sell a lot. So just think about that. What else you can do? What other potential products that you can be selling? And I mean, it could be repurposing microgreens, growing them on a larger scale and repurposing them and turning them into something else, which is also a sellable product, or just having lettuces or herbs, depending on the market and location where you are. I mean, I know, for me, I'm in Washington, D.C. There are tons of restaurants, tons of people who are very health conscious, a lot of vegan and vegetarian restaurants. So I can probably reach out to all of them and see if anybody is willing to work with them. We have tons of food trucks and putting them on tacos, putting them on salads, putting them on soups. But the markets are different in every city. So depending on where you are, you just have to evaluate all the options.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people that we talk to at these schools that, hey, I'm going to start a hydroponic farm and I'm going to go sell to Whole Foods or Central Market or something, name your local organics place. There's such a structure involved in that unless you're just massive out the box and have years of growing experience and have really established yourself, there's almost a tendency not to even listen. It's hard to even get your foot in the door at these bigger places because they know that as a new grower or a smaller grower, you cannot consistently provide the amount of produce that you're going to need, or that they're going to be going through. And these grocery stores are looking for consistency. That's why the food industry now, you have package after package after package that looks the same. That's what the consumer wants. So if one week you have one kind of lettuce and the next week it's a little smaller, next week it's a little bigger or a different type, that inconsistency is where a lot of people get tricked up. So locally, I really like to know the people I'm selling to. We actually sell retailly. For those of you that missed the first part, everything that we grow here, we grow anywhere at any one given time, 20 to 30 different varieties. We grow 40 to 60 varieties overall, and we take these and make them into specialty salads that we deliver. If you'll look at www.victorylunchclub.com, you'll see how we sell our products. We have great luck at CrossFit gyms and workout facilities. We have partnered up with a butcher, and we sell our salads at a butcher, but we only sell salads. I don't sell greens by themselves. I mean, that we've kind of made our name for ourselves with these salads. So that's our marketing that we've pushed. And again, it doesn't matter what you're selling. If you're selling tires or salads or microgreens or wagons, it's the getting yourself out there, being consistent about it and approaching your marketing and your ad campaigns in a consistent manner and in a compelling manner that's going to get you somewhere. So it's a hard market. There's a lot of people that want to get in locally. It's an exciting time to be in it because it's so popular, and everywhere you turn around, it's local this and organic that. So it's a great place to be in. But if you're not separating yourself from the pack, and if you're not providing a great service, making it convenient, we've really found that people are just kind of excuse factories as to why they're not buying local. They forgot about it. It's easier just to run, down to the supermarket. You're a little bit more expensive. There's all these reasons why people will choose not to buy it, but equally there's reasons people do want to buy from you. Hey, I do know my farmer. I understand that it does cost more on a smaller scale to especially grow like how we're growing. They want to know where their stuff is coming from, and they want the variety. I mean, we're growing Asian greens that people's never seen before. and they're getting to try, and they just really like the variety of what we're growing. And that's why I like the idea of the salads, because every week I can bring something new to the table.
That's true. And I leave, my windows are looking out at the Whole Foods Load and Talk, and I never even approach them about trying to sell my microgreens there, because it's competitive. It's tough to get in. There's a whole bunch of different regulations that you need to pass before you even can get in and to start talking to them, and before they start talking to you. But on the other hand, there are all these little stores popping up, and I'm working right now with a retail store that sells nothing but local produce, with just our, Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York. It's all local. There is absolutely nothing else from different states. And she knows all the farmers, the owner of the retail store, and her word, when we met and when we talked about it, her words were welcome to the family. And that's what I love about it. It's a family, it's a community, it's building the relationship, and she knows me, I know her, and I go and hang out there because it's not just a retail store, it's also a food place, and they have a weird beer, local beers and wines, and you get to know people, and you see them buying your product, and you meet them and you talk to them. So bigger stores are a little different story and a little more complicated. You have to look for alternatives.
Yeah, Layla, I've seen you. I've seen a couple of your blogs. I've seen you follow us. I know you're kind of active on Blab more than we are. If you have anything you like, I'd kind of really like to hear your take back on this. There's a question here. Is there any food regulations for direct selling your salads, food permits, and that? We have. In my business, we're running about 5 different companies here, and I think I have every permit known in the state of Texas. We did have to get a certified kitchen. We get inspected. It's just like a regular restaurant. There's not so much regulation, and I begged to Department of Agricultural, what are we supposed to? What can we do? What can we not do? What certifications do we need? And one person would know. So I would call up, and I'd hang up and I'd call back, and I'd tell the whole story over again. This is what we're going to do. What permits do I need? And there just really wasn't. I found that there was so little regulation in it. It was kind of scary. So that's why I like for people.
I'm laughing because it sounds so familiar.
And when you're talking to these agricultural extensions and you're telling them what they're due, hydroponics has been around since the 70s, kind of got bigger in the 70s and has been refined over the years to United States is so far behind hydroponically and just in greenhouses. It's so new. They really don't know how to answer. So we just covered our bases the best we could. We made sure our kitchen is just immaculate all the time. And when we do have people come in and check they're checking temperatures and they're checking for the cleanliness. There's never been a problem. I asked Triple S. I had my lawyers ask, if you're going to get into any kind of business, get yourself a lawyer, get yourself a CPA. But, you want to make sure that you're covered. You want to make sure your insurance can cover it. If, God forbid, somebody gets sick, bad sick, you don't ever want that to happen, but you also don't want to lose everything you worked hard for. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Perez, how you doing?
Nice to meet you. Finally.
Nice to meet you. I've seen you bouncing around. So I know you're actively involved. Are you from Texas? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
it says right in the background. We haven't had you use that.
So I don't know, just kind of what's your take on what you've been talking about as far as organics and supply chains and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you're saying. I think that's really interesting about the permits too, that you couldn't get a straight answer. I really do a lot of my stuff kind of more in the online realm, rather than talking to extension people. But I do have access to those people, of course. Like all of us do.
And it's one of those, listen, guys, when you call an agricultural extension agency or your local ag department, it's just like calling Best Buy or Target. You're going to get a representative who could be having a bad day, who is very new, or who's very experienced, and they're all going to have their slant on their particular job. So if you're going to call on something as important as a regulation, it's best to call 2 or 3 people and get their take on it. And what I've asked for numbers, their employee number, and hey, can you send me an email to verify this is what we talked about? And that way you have something on paper where by chance they come for an inspection and where's your form 4490? Hey, I have this piece of paper from this agricultural entity saying nothing was required, and we'll do anything we can, and when they do come up, look, they're just doing their job, be super nice. They're not trying to hurt you in any way. They're just doing their job just like anything else. And ultimately at the end of the day, I hope just like we are, they're trying to keep the food safe, because that's at the end of the day, that's what's the most important thing. So, I just like to always double check, especially when it comes to permits and anything like that. So.
Yeah, it's pretty much self-certification. USDA doesn't have any requirements, so you have your GAP, the best practices in agriculture. You follow those. You can get audits from, again, some just peer farms and have some certifications there. And you just follow the best practices, because there are really no regulations. And everybody's different. Every state is different. It took me a month just to get a business license, because DC did not know which category of license I should get. They had no idea. And again, microgreens, people don't know what they are. So when you try calling and saying, hey, I'm going to do microgreens, and then you drop hydroponically, you will not believe how many people thought that I'm going to grow pot. The moment I say hydroponically, that's it. I mean, it's just...
it's nonstop. Yeah. It's nonstop.
Yeah. So, and trying to explain that to somebody, and Nick said, right, you have to call 2-3 people. I determined, honestly, my thing is, you need to get an answer. You need to get a final decision. Go to people who have offices, not cubicles. Because those people are actually in charge of making decisions. People who are sitting and picking up the phone every day, they're there checking off the, boxes. So they're looking at regulations. Unfortunately, there are no regulations on microgreens, and they're not there to make a decision. So nobody will be able to tell you what to do. And like I said, it took me a month to get a license. Getting a certificate of occupancy was a whole other thing, and it just nonstop. Every time you go to regulations, it drops right there. I know a guy who will be, growing next to me. He's doing indoor mushrooms, and it's the same thing. Even though there's a little more regulations on mushrooms, and people at least know what they are, they're not very set in stone. And he went to talk to Department of Health. They brought 4 people, including microbiologists, and still were not able to give him an answer. And then said they had to follow up with attorneys. So it's going to be a battle. You're going to go into it for the next at least 2-3 years, would be my expectations. Until any kind of regulations come up and, the government actually catches on how popular and growing, what a growing field hydroponics are. So just prepare yourself for that. Be patient and do the best you can to keep it safe, like Nick said, and have insurance, have a lawyer.
Yeah. People have a misconception that lawyers are going to cost just a ton of money. When you're first getting started, establish yourself with a local lawyer that's, they may not know your industry, but they can protect you. I mean, we have multiple businesses, we have multiple entities. We've done all. If it's been in business, we've done it. So I've had a lawyer with me this whole time. In fact, I've got one for real estate. I've got one for just general business, and then my insurance agent is just wonderful. But if you don't invest in initial legal counseling, and then have somebody backed up to where if you do get in trouble, it's just like anything else. I mean, it's just best to let the lawyer go through their proper channels, just so you don't get yourself in any kind of trouble there. So, how we got off of microgreens into this, but but it's a part of business.
Part of the process,
it's a very real part of business. It's like when I'm grower supply teaching the school, one of the first things I say, look, guys, everybody's state is different. Everybody's county is different. The cities are different. There's statutes and there's the local municipalities. Everything can change depending on where you're at. Some people are highly restrictive. Some people are just, so it's just really where you're at. Hopefully you have a rapport with some other growers. Farmers markets are great resources. How you talked about going to spend time at that place that you sell to, just because of who's there. Farmers markets has been great, and that's where you can really meet and see who you're dealing with. So, Jamie, how are we out on time?
We're at the last minute here.
All right. Hey, is there any other questions that's come up?
That's all. I'm going to go ahead and hop out as well so you guys can end off. But I just wanted to say hi and meet you guys.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
I know what you guys are talking about with the lights and everything because I have aquatic plants.
Well, we're gonna. I plan on hosting one a week, and I know you're pretty active, so I'm sure we'll see each other again.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, good seeing you.
Thanks.
Well, guys, if anybody ever has any questions, you can go to growerscoach.com. You could submit a question over the form, and I'll get back with you if you have one for her. You can go to her website. I'm sure you have a contact form there, but if not, you can't get a hold of her, get a hold of me, and I'll pass it on. I'm sure we'll do one of these together again. It worked out very well, and I really do appreciate everybody showing up. It's good to see that the interest is out there, and hopefully we help some people out. If you have any ideas about what you would like to talk about in future weeks, let me know. Growerscoach.com, submit a form, and hang up on them. But we got. It's not a question, but yeah. Multiple social media outlets, multiple resources up at the top of this. This is recorded, so you'll be able to watch it in full, except for the first few minutes. I missed it. But there's a bunch of resources at the top of the comments here, just places you can click on about microgreens, about equipment, about Johnny Seeds, about Grower Supply, about Underground Greens, about all of our different stuff that we do here. I just appreciate everybody showing up, and we will see you next week.
So, thank you, Nick, for having me over. Thank you, everybody else.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody else. All right. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.